file.
뭐지?
Okay, guys, we started today's lecture, and today's topic is structure of cells. So maybe you may feel this is a quite the basic one, but there are many things we can think about it. So again, we are going to start with this the quiz today. And, okay. Okay, we start this Kahoot quiz. Okay, we start. Maybe too easy. So at least memorizing the facts, something you can do very well, right? Okay, those details we are going to think about later. So for now, seems like you did the pre-work well. Let's move on. Not perfect. So this one, I assume this is a relatively easy one. Okay, we are going to cover this later again too. Okay. After mitosis, there are two kinds of cell division, right? One is a mitosis and the other one is a meiosis. Mitosis is dividing cells, regular cell, into two cells. So I didn't say here, but this is a per cell. Originally, the cell has a 2N, two copies of a DNA. So that means one N is from mother and the other one is from father. So regular cell has a 2N. When they divide into two cells, they make the exact same copy. So DNA content should be 2N. Okay? That's mitosis. Okay, John is here. Two different opinions. In mitosis, to make two cells, first job is you need to synthesize the DNA, right? Make a copy of DNA information, and 2M becomes amount-wise, amount of DNA-wise, DNA amount become double. So amount-wise, that's about 4N. DNA amount is double, and they did not divide yet. Then in one cell structure, there are two copies of 2N, right? That's why amount-wise, this should be considered as 4n amount. DNA amount is double. Okay, that's the point of this other question. Sounds a similar question, but I'm asking different things. Okay, perfect. So amount-wise, that's a double, but that's exactly the same copy of original 2n. So that's why information amount-wise, it's just the same 2 copies. So total information should be same as original. So that is a 2n. Okay, this is a practice, and we are moving to a little more tricky questions. Okay. Now this is asking you, what is the meiosis 1 and meiosis 2? So still majority of you got right answer. In meiosis 1, first of all, DNA synthesis happens. So exactly the same copy of DNA is synthesized and divided into 2. But those sister chromosomes, they attach to each other and divide into 2. You synthesize the 1 copy of DNA and then divide into half. That's why total amount of DNA-wise, it should be 2n. Okay, amount-wise, that is 2n. Is this a tricky question? Now, there is a meiosis 1 and 2. In 1, there's a double copy. Synthesis of a DNA is done. And there are 2 DNA sets. One DNA is from father. The other DNA is from mother. And then those same copies, when they divide into half, they stay in one cell. That means it's exactly the same copy is in one cell, isn't it? So originally 1 copy was from father. The other copy was from mother. Now, after they synthesize those chromosomes, and then those same chromosome move to one cell. That's happening in meiosis 1. Because those 2 copies of DNA is exactly the same, information-wise, it has half information of original cell. That's why the information-wise, this is 1n, not 2n. Anybody is not clear? Okay, we move on. Okay. Now maybe you didn't understand the meaning of a recombination very well. If there is no recombination, the DNA copy should be exactly the same. And it's divided. Then it should have the same 2 copies. Amount-wise, that's a 2n. Information should be 1n. But before they divide, if there is recombination happening, then they exchange some part of that DNA with the other pair, not from the same pair. If it happens among same pair, there is no change. But if that exchange is happening with the other pair, then partial information of that chromosome is exchanged. That's a recombination. Then, and the result is the two copies of DNA, they are not same. If it is exactly the same, then that information should be N. But partially it's exchanged. Then one chromosome is original. The other one has some partially different information. So if this copy is from mother, and partially father information is introduced into this chromosome, that's why there is a little more diversity is introduced. So that amount cannot exceed 2N, and that should be bigger than N. That's why if there's a recombination is happening, more diversity is introduced, bigger than N and less than 2N. If it is not clear to you for this the question and answers, that means you do not understand those meiosis 1 and 2 and recombination clearly. Okay, this part you may need to review what's going on in those processes. Okay, after meiosis 2, then those two copies of DNA is anyway is separated into one, and then go into the one cells, either sperm cell or egg cell, and that amount of DNA information should be 1N. Now, if I give you a question as if there is a recombination is happening, then this answer should be N, or this is bigger than N. What do you say? Can I hear your answer?
Bigger than N.
Bigger than N, you think? This is Dongwoo. Any different opinion?
It should be N, because in meiosis 2, they're just the sister chromatid is divided. They have same information. So if the combination occurs, it should be same.
There may be different kinds of cells can be produced, but total amount of information cannot exceed N, because maximum amount of DNA should be N. So there is no more N. Previous case, after meiosis 1, there is two sets of the DNA was combined together. That's why some part of that information is exchanged. Then information is bigger than N. But in this case, maximum information should be N. Physically, it has only 1N contents of DNA, right? Clear, Dong? Not clear enough?
I'll study it myself.
Okay, after this, I will explain one more time. So let's solve the last problem. Okay, I tried to make this as tricky as possible, but many of you got the right answer. Okay, you already practiced this problem in quiz I gave you on the website. Now, if you just give exact number, you may choose this, 2 to the 23. So if it's a super big number, then maybe okay, you can use it this way. But to make it a little tricky, I tried to add this one here. So smaller than this, okay? If there is no recombination happening, then in principle, you can choose the chromosome number is 23, and then randomly you choose one of them each. Then this is a combination of 23 out of 46. Is that correct? No. combination of out of 2, you select 1 each, then you combine this 2 by 2 by 2 by 2 by 2 23 times. So that's why total combination number should be 2 to the 23. That's correct. Now, if you want to change this into a little easier number to calculate, so always in this class, the exact number is not so important. Approximate, but same scale or same order number, that's more important. So 2 to the 5, what's the number?
32.
32. 2 to the 8.
256.
256. That's good. 2 to the 9.
512.
512. 2 to the 10.
1024.
1024. 2 to the 10 is a 1024. Now, approximately, to make it easy, we can calculate 2 to the 10 is approximately 1000. Right? Then 2 to the 20. 2 to the 20. Young 2 to the 20. It's a 1 million. Then if you take out the 2 to the 20, then we have a leftover 3. Then 2 to the 3 is 8. So this is approximately 8 million, we can say. Okay, so this is a trick I tried to add. One of you already gave this kind of a calculation in the quiz problem. So if you looked at your friends' answers, then you're already kind of familiar with this conversion. So rather than this number, this is much easier for us to catch how many different kinds of cells we can get, right? So approximately 8 million different kind of egg cells we can get if it's a woman, okay? 8 million, but this number, we didn't count the recombination. Recombination, so I don't have the blackboard here. If everything is the same, then after meiosis 1, you will have the same copy like this. If recombination happens, some part of information is exchanged with these two. Then this much of a new information is introduced. Original calculation, we counted each chromosome as 1 unit, only divided into 2. But now, some part of information is exchanged with the other part. One is from father, one is from mother. So some new information is introduced. That's why, originally without this whole information should be any information, because this one and this one is identical. But if there's some part of them is changed, then this one and this one is not same. If it's a fully random, then we can say this is 2n, but partially introduced, then that's less than 2n. Okay? But after this is divided into 2, after meiosis 2, then anyway, whatever introduced here, total amount, physical amount is 1n, amount of information is also 1n. That was the answer for the problem 9. Dong, clear? Okay.
Yes.
Good. So this is some practice of how we calculate those the diversity. So this is the reason why we have a so complicated sex system in our the life forms. If it's just a simple cell division like a bacteria, life will be much simpler. And also, we can make our copy exactly the same copy if you don't have a mutation. Then we can make exactly the same copy of ours. Then that would be easier and straightforward. But we took quite complicated 2 sex system. I don't know whether there's a 3 or 4 sex system in the life forms. There may be some exception. Anyway, exchange of this chromosome and recombinate. Recombinate means we make those combinations of those. Now, we have 23 pairs of chromosome. And fruit fly, the Drosophila, they have 4 pairs. Then how many different kind of egg cells Drosophila can make? One Drosophila can generate how many different kinds of egg cell or sperm cell? if there is no recombination? Come on, it's not difficult. We just calculate here. How many?
2 to 3. 8 million.
Is that 2 to the 3?
2 recombination. Okay.
Without the recombination, it has 4 pairs. Come on. Juan? Hey, what are you doing?
It's
So let's just
16.
say it should be 16, right? 2 to the 4.
Yeah.
So if the chromosome number is only 4, then we have a combination number of 16. 16 different kind of a sperm cell or egg cell we can generate. Human being can generate a lot more diversity, about 8 million, because those DNAs are divided into 23 different fragments. And then they can be randomly reshuffled and then recombine, recombinate. That's how we can generate a lot of diversities. So that means if there's one couple, mother and father, if they make babies, the chance of those 2 babies, if it is not, 일란성 쌍둥이, then exactly same information can be transferred is 1 out of 8 million. That's the chance. That means that many different kind of diversity we can generate from one couple. Okay, so that's the reason how we generate those diversity quickly, and then it can be beneficial for evolution at the viewable point. Okay, now move on. Okay, any questions so far? Where is the file? I close the file. Okay, let's continue. Okay, we pass through this. Okay, what do you think about this question? Now, if you compare man and woman, so man make a sperm and woman make an egg cell. Who makes more diversity? Approximately, we just calculated 8 million, right? Then who makes a little more diverse, the egg cell or sperm cell? Woman or man?
Men.
Men,
Men make a more diversity. Why?
because they have different
Why?
pair of sex chromosome.
Man has a different sex chromosome, X or Y. But when they make the sperm cell, they should choose one of them, right? Then can it introduce more than 2 factors? You choose either X or Y. If it's a woman, they have 2 different kinds of X chromosome, right? That X chromosome also can generate 2 options, factor of 2. Then why men should have more diversity? Only sperm cell can have either X or Y. Egg cell, all the egg cells should have X, but those X is not same X, right? There can be X1 or X2. So there is also diversity factor of 2. Sperm case, X or Y, it's a 2, but it's also the factor of 2. Then it should be same. Why the man should have more diversity? Your logic has some problem, right? Yeah, go ahead.
because woman has X1 and X2, but there is almost same sexual genes that consist of the women's, but men's have X and Y, which have men's sex genes and women's sex genes either. So it is more diverse gene either.
Okay, that is a little different viewable point. That's an interesting point. Juan said, the information-wise, Y is much different from X. That's why if you count those sperm cells which has the Y, then they have a more diverse the gene. Okay, that's a good argument. But my question was not very clear, maybe. In this case, I asked whether how many different kind of sperm cell, how many different kind of egg cell they generate. That was the question, okay? Then if you change that, the angle a little to that way, then how would you like to answer? So if you count those number of sperm cell we can generate, let's just say approximately 8 million. Egg cell, approximately 8 million, right? If there is no recombination, then those numbers should be similar. If you take account the recombination, then what do you think? Recombination can introduce more diversity, right? So that acts as more than 23 pairs. It's more pairs of a chromosome. Then what do you think? Then the question is whether the recombination can happen between X and Y. Between X and X, definitely there is recombination because, as Joan said, those two chromosomes are very similar to each other. They can exchange some part of it. Recombination happens. And between X and Y, some part of the Y is maybe overlapped with the X, but they do not recombinate. Those genes are the essential genes. If they do recombinate, then they cannot survive. So if I give you this information, then what should be your answer? Egg cell or sperm cell? Which one should have more different kinds of cells?
Egg cell.
It's egg cells. Okay. So using this the problem, you try to think about those recombination and also those process, how to generate more diversity kind of things. Someone, is that clear? Any unclear part? Everything is okay? Yes? Okay, move on. Okay, today we are going to study about this cell structure. So this is some structure I draw myself using ChemDraw. ChemDraw can draw the chemical structure, but this is a ChemDraw. You can utilize this for drawing anything. So here approximately you can say this is a cell membrane, nucleus, ER, Golgi, mitochondria, and some vesicles, something like that. So in the quiz problem I gave you the question that what's the difference between inside and outside of cell? Okay, so there were some ions. Which one is higher concentration in outside of the cell?
Sodium.
Sodium was higher outside. Anything else? Anything else higher in outside? Say again.
Nutrient.
Nutrient. Okay, total amount of nutrient outside of the cell versus inside the one cell, maybe outside is higher, but the cell was very diligent. And then it collected a lot of nutrients inside. If you think about the density of the nutrient, maybe the inside of the cell can be potentially higher, isn't it? So nutrient is a little difficult to compare, I think.
Chloride ion.
Chloride was higher outside. Anything else? Can you think out?
Potassium.
Potassium. was actually opposite. So this is some comparison of those in and out. Inside the cells, there are potassium was higher. And then magnesium is similar, let's say. Calcium is significantly different. Outside is much higher and inside is much lower. And chloride is sodium and chloride, they are outside is much higher. And if you compare those two, then high and low one, it's almost more than 10 times of a difference, potassium versus the sodium. Okay, if you think about those life, the cells when they developed, and they tried to distinguish self and environment. And then they tried to make this a boundary. And most common structure of those life boundary in our planet is this kind of a funny lipid bilayer. Okay, utilizing this kind of lipid bilayer, and we tried to isolate our body from outside. Then if you think about those components, so this is intracellular, this is the extracellular, and this is environment. Environment, and we tried to distinguish inside from outside. And there is a significant issues. If you make this soft membrane structure, there are strong osmosis problem, osmotic pressure problem. So if you have too much iron outside, and if you don't have anything inside, then you cannot survive. If the concentration of iron is higher outside and lower inside, what happens? Cell explode or cell shrink?
Shrink.
Inside is low concentration, then they lose more water, then they shrink like this, right? So to sustain that pressure from inside to outside, we need to have a similar amount of ion concentrations. That's why to compensate this high sodium concentration, we chose almost a similar alkali metal, potassium, and then make almost similar concentrations in and out, but different kinds of the ions. Outside is sodium, inside is potassium, okay? And calcium is also calcium, and outside is sodium, then we have positive charges outside. Then in nature, if you have the positive charges, there's always negative charges to neutralize it. If not, it's chemically unstable. So that's why sodium, this amount, then similar amount of chloride exists together, then this is sodium chloride. Okay. Now inside is a potassium, that we need to have another kind of anion inside too to compensate it. What anion do you know inside the cell? There are a lot. Chloride is not option. Chloride concentration is much lower. What is the other anion inside cell? We already have seen in the last class. Dual anion.
Phosphate.
Phosphate. We have a lot of phosphate in DNA and RNA and other structures. So phosphate concentration inside the cell is much higher, and it is balancing out this difference. And interestingly, magnesium is a similar amount. Not much difference. The 3 times is a comparable amount, we can say. Calcium amount is amazingly different. It's more than 1,000 times different. Inside the cell, calcium amount is much, much lower than outside. That means always our cell pump out the calciums to keep the disbalance. So ion-wise, if you think this is one charge, one positive charge is sodium or potassium, they mainly act as much higher concentrations. They act as osmotic pressure balancer. Now, dication, like magnesium or calcium, they can bind to 2 sides like this. That's why they have a more regulatory or more complex other functions they can do. So magnesium is usually used for structural stabilization of DNA or RNA. They did not choose calcium. They saved this calcium for different purpose. inside intracellular calcium concentration is very low like this, but high concentration of calcium is stored in different area. And then when they need a signal, they secrete those calcium and then generate those calcium wave. So they use this calcium as a signaling molecules. So there is an option that they could choose either magnesium for signaling and then calcium for structuring. That was also one possible choice, but somehow nature chose calcium as a signaling molecule and magnesium as structural molecules. There's an interesting comparison, this intracellular and extracellular with the seawater. If you look at these seawater compositions, is this more similar to intracellular or extracellular?
Extra.
Okay, it's more like extracellular. Now, when you say extracellular, which one is extracellular? What is extracellular environment?
Outside of cell membrane.
Outside the cell membrane, then when we said that, then where is the cell? If a cell is like a bacteria, it's just a single cell structure, then there is no clear extracellular environment, right? It can be any environment. When you say extracellular environment, what does that mean? That implies the cell is sustained in some kind of a media, right? What can be the media? Any example?
Blood.
Like a blood, right? Cell is suspended in the blood, then blood plasma can be considered as an extracellular environment, and cell is suspending in that environment. Now, if you look at these two comparison, extracellular the composition is kind of a diluted seawater, right? This sodium chloride concentration is maybe 3 times or 4 times higher, but this is kind of a diluted the seawater. So this is kind of evidence the scientists believe that the original cells, they started their life and their history from the sea. And then they pump out those the sodium chloride, and then they accumulated different atoms, like different ions, like potassium or phosphate inside the cells. Okay, so this is the end result of our current life forms of the cells. We isolate the identity by phospholipid bilayer, and then by pumping out selectively. So this is inside the cell, this is outside of the cell. Pump out sodium, pump in potassium, and then we keep this identity inside here. We call this is self, the cell. This is us, and this is the environment. Okay. Now, through this membrane, small charge balance is formed here. Outside is slightly more positive, and inside is a little slightly negative. So this membrane potential we call, this is what is called as a cell membrane potential. And if you think about those membrane potential, now outside is slightly positive, and inside is slightly negative. This difference is about -40 to -80 the millivolt. And this kind of potential is applied here. Now, if you think about those, the composite of this membrane structure, those are phospholipid, something like this. Phospholipid, they have this long hydrophobic chain, and then they have the polar head groups like this. If you look at this the phospholipid structure, what is the net charge of the head group? Can you think the first one? This one, what is the net charge? Is it plus or minus?
Minus.
Minus 1 or -2?
Depends. -1.
It's in between of -1 and -2, depending on those the pKa of these values. Okay, sometimes the mixture of 1 minus and mixture of 2 minus is between 1 and 2. How about this? This is minus. How about this one?
It also depending on the pKa.
Well, first one and second one, if this H is protected by different structure, then the first one is more similar to this. So this is a strongly acidic. So this is, you can say this is -1. Okay. If this is removed, then there may be -1.5 or something. If this is blocked here, then this one is, you can guarantee it to be -1. Okay. So here -1, 1.5, -1. How about this? Phosphatidylcholine.
Neutral.
Neutral. -1 + 1, neutral. How about this? Phosphatidylethanolamin. If this is a protonarity here, then
Neutral also.
that's also neutral. +1, -1. So we have a 2 neutral. How about this one? Phosphatidylserine.
-1.
It's -1. Minus, plus. It's -1. How about this? Phosphatidylglycerol.
-1.
This is also -1 because the all other things are the neutral. This is -1. Now, these are kind of a main component of a phospholipid. Okay, except these two, phosphatidylcholine or phosphatidylethanolamin. These guys, at best, it can be neutral. All other phospholipids, they are negatively charged. Okay, there is a very exceptional the positive charge to the phospholipid. So that means even though we put plus charge here and negative charge here, that does not mean that the outside here is really positively charged. You should think this is inside is a strongly negative, outside is a slightly negative. And this relative difference is expressed as relatively this is a positively charged the potential and inside is negatively charged the potential. But it does not mean that physically this is really positively charged and this is really negatively charged. Okay, so this is very important point. Now we started to say the inside and outside. If it's just a single cell, it's relatively straightforward. It's relatively straightforward that the inside the cell is encapsulated inside the membrane, then we can say that's inside. But in our body, we already talked about from the mouse, if you take out something and then go through to go out to the other end, this inside gastrointestinal tract, we can consider that's outside of the body, right? Topologically. Then, which part is really inside? If you take a drug, then if you say we took those drugs inside our body, if they are not absorbed through this gastrointestinal tract, they are still outside of the body. After they are absorbed through this part, then they got into our body. Let's say if they got into the bloodstream, or if you take those drugs by injection, if you put those drugs by injection, they are inside the blood. Are they inside our body? Several minutes ago, we said we compared those extracellular environment as a blood plasma, right? Real inside is inside the cell is inside. Blood is also considered should be, technically speaking, blood is also considered should be extracellular environment, right? Now, how can we measure, the amount of a drug really inside our body? It's quite a difficult questions. To measure that, we need to take out all cells, wash out very carefully, remove all the blood, and then extract out those drug compounds, and we can measure those really observed drug compounds in our body. But that's too difficult. So relatively, comparing to this gastrointestinal tracts, that's obviously that's outside. We take blood concentration of the drugs, as kind of observed drug that's accessible to all our organs because blood goes to everywhere in our body. So those are index of drug concentration in our body. Okay, that's not really inside of our body, but they are considered as surrogate the parameter of a drug absorption into our body. Same thing for blood glucose concentration for diabetics measurement. Blood is again, it's outside of the cells. Real effect of those glucose should be measured inside the cell, but measuring the intracellular concentration of them is very difficult. So we just use blood concentration as a surrogate. Okay, but still you should understand that which one is really inside and which one is really outside. Now coming back to the cells, inside the cell there are nucleus and different small organelles. One of them was a vesicle. Now this vesicles looks like a small the pouch, and some of them is called as a lysosome and some other structures. Now some of them is called as endosome or endocytosis. Now let's think about this. Endosome is formed something like this. Some of those plasma membrane structure, cell membrane, is making this kind of a structure, and then some part of it is engulfed inside the cell. This process we call endocytosis. Endo means go inside. Cytosis means this is the cell process. Okay. Now, if this becomes more acidic, and then they fuse together with the lysosome, and they can make a different acidic vesicle inside the cell. Now, the question here is, inside this vesicle, that environment should be more like outside of the cell or inside of the cell?
Outside of cell.
Original content of this part here, this was engulfed outside the material and just closed that to make this vesicle, right? So that means this is inside, cytosol is inside. Inside of this vesicle should be more similar to outside of the cell, isn't it? That's funny, right? This vesicle is inside the cell, but inside of the vesicle is similar to outside of the cells, composition-wise. We just engulfed those outside environment inside our body. Okay. Now, those reverse process of this is so-called exocytosis. If it's coming through this way and make an endosome inside here, this is endocytosis. Now, if it goes out, this goes into the membrane and fused and then release. This is called as exocytosis. If there's any form, if it's formed inside here, this is called as endosome. If the vesicles are formed outside as a small vesicle like this, that kind of a vesicle, do you know what you call? This is an endosome. If there's a small vesicle secreted to the outside. Endosome and outside, what do you like to call?
Exosome.
It is an exosome. It's kind of a very hot topic these days. It's kind of a small vesicles forming outside of a cell. It's kind of a small cell like that. Now the question is, this is the endocytosis process. Reverse process is exocytosis. Through exocytosis, can you form exosome? If this vesicle goes into plasma membrane and fused to the plasma membrane like this, can it form the exosome?
No.
You cannot, because this endosome is just disappeared, and then this process is acting as a secretion of this content to the outside. But this membrane structure is fused to plasma membrane structure. It does not form extra exosome outside, right? So that's why there's a different process we need. That's not exocytosis. This is ectocytosis we need to have. And if I draw this, this is a outside of cell, this is inside of cell. This process is called as endocytosis, as we learned. Okay, this one coming in and then forming up, and inside here, this is similar to outside. And ectocytosis is not reverse process of this. Ectocytosis is the forming up this kind of a bud, and then make this budding process, and then this one is cleaved here, and this one is secreted to the outside. That's the exosome. Okay, so exocytosis and ectocytosis, they are not same. It's a different process. And important thing is, once exosome is formed, inside that exosome content, is that similar to intracellular environment or extracellular environment? Say again.
Intracellular.
It should be more like an intracellular environment. Okay, so if you see any kind of exosome secreted from the cells, those are kind of small cells. Inside the component should be very similar to inside the cells. Okay, that is very important to understand what they are doing in the bloodstream, kind of things. Okay, now keeping that in mind, if you look at those cellular structure, now I give you some questions about mitochondrial membrane and nuclear membrane kind of things. Now here, which one is inside and which one is outside? You should think. Through this membrane, this is inside. Inside of this vesicle,
Outside.
it's like outside. Inside of this nucleus,
Outside.
is this outside? Nucleus is also this kind of a double membrane structure. They are not isolated membrane structure. This is have some hole here, but those are connected to cytosol. Right? Then inside the nucleus is inside.
Inside.
Okay. Now, if you look at this endoplasmic reticulum, inside this endoplasmic reticulum, is that like inside or outside? Inside this endoplasmic reticulum topologically, is this inside or outside?
Outside.
That's like outside. It's funny. That means this vesicle can be fused. Oops. This vesicle can be fused through this and then move slowly and then fuse into this membrane. So we have a lot of inside and outside. Now, if you think about the mitochondria, I asked you those reasons why mitochondria has double layer. It has one layer here and another layer here. They live inside our cell. This is inside. Mitochondria, originally it was a separate bacteria. This is inside. They need to have some kind of a boundary area. So then maybe this intermembrane structure, this can be more like outside. It's funny, right? So by looking at those the cellular structures, there are segregations. Those segregations all happens through this lipid bilayer structure. And there are differences between this environment. Some of them is more like inside, some of it is more like outside. And to distinguish them, chemical composition, which has a higher potassium versus a higher sodium. Okay, so this kind of thing is something we needed to think about. Looks like we know we believe we know those cellular structure. There is a little more complicated the things we need to think. Okay. Okay, in some of those last class, one of you asked these questions. Tamiflu and Relenza, there is some differences between two, and major difference is absorption. Relenza has a highly charged, that's why it cannot penetrate the cell membrane. And Tamiflu is better to be observed. This kind of a parameter is very important to be drug, whether the drug compound can go through those membrane or not. This property is summarized as admit, and A is absorption. D is distribution, M is metabolism, and E is excretion. So these parameters are how the drug compounds are managed by our body. And whether this compound, this drug, can have access to inside of our body. Okay, absorption is the first step, whether it can go through those plasma membrane and it can be distributed to the right position, and whether it can be destroyed or changed by metabolism, and it can be removed from our body. This property is how we treat the drug compound. So opposite other side is how this drug affect to our body. One of them is a toxicity. Of course, we want to have a drug activity. That's also one kind of the activity, but toxicity is also how the drug affect our body. So these two directions, we say, these black color ones, this is what we call pharmacokinetic parameters or PK parameters. How the drug affect our body, this parameter we call pharmacodynamic parameters. So these two, the parameters are quite important parameter to be the good drugs. The first step is this PK parameter should be met. If not, drug cannot have access to the inside of our body. If drug is always outside of our body, like in just the blood or just a gastrointestinal tract, then there is no effect of the drugs to our body. Okay, so these parameters are deciding the application of the Tamiflu and Relenza, whether it can be used as oral drug or spray drug kind of things. Okay. I gave you some topics that you can choose. Nobody took up the topic. So there was some explanations and video clip for this lipid raft structure. And in lipid raft structure, there is some, sorry, somebody's calling. Yep. Lipid raft structure is kind of a rigid area on the plasma membrane, and also it has a lot of enzymes and receptors that reside here. And this rigid structure has an important role. And one of the questions is how to make this membrane structure rigid. Okay, so this is a phospholipid structure. One common trick is utilizing this kind of a cholesterol or steroid structures. So if these steroid structures are inserted in this area, this is something like this. So you make the wall with this the soil, and if you put this kind of a steroid inside, then that makes that membrane structure is quite more rigid. Then this rigid structure can host different receptors and enzymes on this area. That's the lipid wrapped the area, which is kind of quite important. You may hear that term sometime soon. So I just introduced this part. One more thing I wanted to show you is if you think about intracellular environment, you may have some kind of the picture that inside the cell is kind of water, and protein molecules and drug molecules that they are swimming around inside this the water structure. So that kind of the picture we have. But actually inside the cell, it's a really condensed structure. Very high concentration of the materials are filled inside the cell, and this vesicle and connected this receptor and proteins, something like that. Now, if you think about those concentration, usually when you say concentration of a drug, we say micromolar concentration. Sometimes even lower concentration, the compound should have effect, like a nanomolar concentration. Then we call those compounds, those drugs are very active drugs. Okay. If it's a nutrient molecule, maybe you can think it's a millimolar concentration. Then can we try to calculate millimolar concentration? If it's a 1 millimolar of a glucose, then in 1 liter of water, how many grams of glucose do you need? Glucose molecular weight is 150. Definition of a molar concentration is in 1 liter, how many moles do you have, right? That's a molar concentration. Shall we practice a little using different example? 1 liter of water. What is the concentration of water concentration in molar concentration? One liter of water.
55.
Okay, good. So Dongho has that the number. So let's try to calculate that the concentration together. 1 liter of water. What's the weight?
1,000 grams.
It's 1,000 grams, and molecular weight of water is 18. Then 1,000 divided by 18. What's the number?
55.
That's a 55. Okay, so that means if you divide 1,000 grams with the molecular weight, you get number of water in terms of a mole number. Okay, it's a little funny to calculate in pure water's concentration of water. It sounds funny, but if you follow definition, then inside of 1 liter of water, how many moles of water molecule in there? Okay, that means that's a 55 mole of water is inside of the 1 liter of water. That's why, technically speaking, we can say pure water's concentration of water is 55 mole. So then 55 molar concentration. That's theoretically maybe maximum concentration we can think out. Okay, so to be a little more practical, let's say if you make 1 molar concentration of glucose in 1 liter, then how many grams do we need to add to the water? Molecular weight of glucose is 180.
180
180, what's the unit?
gram.
Gram. To make 1 molar concentration, you need to add 180 gram. It's a lot because the water is the 1,000 gram, and this is almost 20% of the solute you need to add to make 1 molar concentration. Okay, so if it's 100 millimolar concentration, if it's a 1 millimolar concentration of glucose, you need to add 180 milligram in 1 liter. So that's kind of a concentration we need for nutrient. If it's a drug compound, we need to use 0.1% of that. It's a very small amount. Now, real content of that biological materials inside the cell. This is 400 grams per liter. If it's a glucose, this is about the 2 molar concentration of glucose. This is a super high concentration. So that means inside the cellular environment, it is not like fish swimming pool kind of conditions. It's more like a fish is skidding in the mud kind of situations. It's a highly, highly compact and very viscous environment. Okay, so this one of the we should think all the time. So that's why one of you said, when one of you said maybe nutrient is the higher in outside, well, density-wise, inside the cell is a highly, highly packed structure. It's not diluted pool. It's a very thick the soup of proteins, carbohydrates, and many other things, DNAs, RNAs, kind of things. Okay, so this is some of those structure, the information for the cell. Now let's talk about the protein synthesis. So protein is made by ribosome. By reading RNA information, and the machinery to make a protein is the ribosome. Where is the ribosome synthesis site inside the cell?
Nucleus.
Inside the nucleus. And ribosome is what is it composed of?
Protein and rRNA.
Protein and rRNA. Which one has a higher content? RNA is a more amount or protein is a more amount? Major component is RNA. Okay, it's almost a 2 to the 1. And 60–70% of the ribosome is RNA, and then there is accessory proteins. Our ribosome is one of the biggest machinery in our cell, has catalytic function to make a protein, but amazingly, it's not protein catalyst, it's an RNA catalyst. And it is synthesized inside the nucleus. And the position of the ribosome synthesis, we call nucleolar structure. In Korean, we call it in. Okay, so inside there, ribosome is synthesized, and it is exported into cytosol. And then protein synthesis can happen using this ribosome, and the ribosome is attached to ER. That's why if there are many ribosomes, then it's called as rough ER. If there's no ribosome, then it is called as a smooth ER, right? And the synthesized proteins, they can go to the many different locations inside the cell. And they can be modified with the different structure, so-called post-translational modification also can happen. Now here, I want you guys can focus on this location of the synthesized protein. Protein is a machinery, the machines in our body, and they should go to the different part of those cells. Some of them, they go to the cytosolic area. Some of them is a secrete, as in exocytosis. Some of them is that they anchored on the plasma membrane or different membrane structures. Maybe you have not pay much attention to those. In the movie, there are very good the informations for those. Let me show you some of that information to remind you. Can you see the screen?
Yeah,
can you see the cell screen? Okay, so now this is the nucleus, the structure, and then this is the nuclear pore. Okay, now here, those RNAs, ribosomes are secreted into cytosol, and then those are the ribosomes are attached on the endoplasmic reticulum, and then two components of ribosome is attached to each other, and they start to synthesize protein. Some of the protein is delivered to mitochondria area by accessory. Some of them is secreted inside endoplasmic reticulum. Now this endoplasmic reticulum, they can form through ectocytosis, and they form this kind of a vesicle. And this vesicle is moving to different structure like a Golgi, and then they fuse the in, and then they can modify it, and then eventually this is a plasma membrane, and then they secreted. Some part of the proteins are secreted to the outside. Some part of that proteins are anchored on the membrane. Okay, so there's a lot of information in this movie. That's what I meant. There's many things you may think and look up. So many of you selected your topic, but you chose some of those maybe simpler or the easy one as the first choice. At least you chose bacterial structure and the virus structures. So those that I didn't cover today. So to understand those different targets of a drug in comparison to our own cells, maybe virus and bacterial structure, and how to distinguish those by different other methods, they can be covered in the next class. But also, I thought this is quite important topic, which I didn't put up on the website. So, Joan, did you choose your topic for presentation?
Yes, I did.
Okay, so just before the class, I didn't see that yet. Which one did you choose?
I chose the lipid raft.
Lipid raft, okay.
Yes.
That's one option. Maybe you can talk about more about the lipid raft. So in case you could not choose the topic, I was thinking to recommend you to think about this different location, the protein synthesis, how they find their final locations, whether it's a cytosolic or secretion or membrane. There's some clues in the movie I just showed you. So it's up to you whether you choose this topic or lipid wrapped. You choose.
I think I should search about those subject right after the class is ended. So can you give me some times after the class?
Okay. You just let me know which one you choose.
Okay, thank you.
Depending on your decision, I will decide the next the content material myself.
Thank you.
Okay, today I think I finished on time. So next class time is again, it's a Thursday at 2 p.m. And you have some assignment for those different structure of the cells and also the virus and bacteria, and a little different the view of those drug targets. And again, if you are late or you want to modify the file, then you can send me those files by email. Okay, do you have any question for today's class?
I have a requirement. If Joanne okay, can I change my topic to the protein movement?
Oh, do you want to choose, what was your original one? Your mitochondria or the?
It was bacterial cell, but it's not so interesting.
Okay, you want to choose this one?
Yeah, location.
Okay. Then Joan, you don't have options. You keep your lipid wrapped.
Okay, I see. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, fine. So this would be the quite interesting topic. There are quite clear, the smart way how the cells and also the ribosome, they decide how to send this the synthesized protein to the right position. That's also in terms related to the inside and outside of those cells. If there's a membrane, the membrane also has outside the outside part and also inside the part. This can be also related to that. So this can be interesting topic. Okay, Sejin choose this one. Any other comment or question? I lost one person who is not here. 영문, 도윤, 세진, 성은, 택준, 주한. One person is missing. Oh, Dong is back. Okay, any other question or comment? Okay, if not, we finish today's lecture and see you on Thursday.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thank
thank you guys.
Professor.
Professor,
Mm.
I have just a little question,
Yeah, go ahead.
not related to class, but my presentation material is about chloroplast and photosynthesis, but I think if it's too irrelevant for what we are doing right now, I think I'll change my material as well.
Which one would you like to choose?
Well, if you can recommend one, I'll choose that as well.
Okay, 1 second. How about the bacterial structure? Sajin just dropped. He wanted to change that into different one. So bacterial structure, we covered a little before, but we didn't say clearly about the gram positive, gram negative, and also the cell wall, cell membrane structure kind of things. So the topic should be related to which antibiotic works only one kind of a bacteria, not the other. Okay.
Okay.
So that can be one other important topic I wanted to cover.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Then I think I should prepare with that. Okay.
Okay, that sounds good.
Yes, sir.
Okay,
Professor.
thank you, Dong.